All right, let's dive into the story of Antropolis. It was a colony on top of the world, a bustling society that stumbled upon an idea so powerful it could build an empire or, as they found out, shatter it completely. This is the story of how promises, the very thing that held their society together, twisted into chains.
And that quote? It's really the heart of this whole story. You see, in Antropolis, a promise was as good as gold. It was the bedrock of their economy. But they were about to learn a brutal lesson. When you make more promises than you have actual wealth to back them up, those promises don't just lose their value. They become a trap, pulling a golden age right down into darkness.
So how on earth did this all happen? Well, it started with something that seemed almost too good to be true. An irresistible new idea from the Bank of Antropolis. They basically offered a tool that felt like magic, the ability to borrow from your future self and start living that future today.
The concept was just incredibly simple. The bankers would say, look, we'll give you 10 leaf coins right now. The only catch, you had to bring back 12 later. That little extra bit, that was the interest. And to everyone, it seemed like such a tiny price to pay for instant prosperity. Who wouldn't take that deal? And the effect was absolutely electric. The tunnels of Antropolis were just buzzing with this brand new energy. All of a sudden, workers could expand their homes, traders could fill their shops with exotic seeds, young ants could build their first nests without waiting. It felt like a golden age had dawned practically overnight.
But, not everyone was popping the celebratory nectar. In a quiet corner, an economist ant named Alex was watching all this with a growing sense of dread. He saw right past the shiny leaf coins to what was really happening. The colony wasn't creating new wealth, it was just pulling it forward from the future. And he started asking a question that, frankly, nobody wanted to hear.
And pretty soon, that initial boom, well, it started to give way to a much more complicated reality. On the surface, Antropolis had never looked better, it had never been more prosperous. But underneath that gleaming facade, the first cracks were starting to appear.
What's so fascinating here is this stark contrast. The official story, the one the Queen was hearing, was all about incredible growth, new tunnels, buzzing markets, production going through the roof. But the reality for the average ant, something else entirely. Their hard work wasn't for their families anymore, it was just to pay back the banks. Those loans were becoming invisible chains.
And this quote, wow, it just brilliantly captures the ant cost of this whole system. This mother ant says it all. She's working harder than ever. She's part of that booming production, but she's actually falling further and further behind. Her work wasn't building a future anymore. It was just paying for the past.
Now, this personal struggle was really just a symptom of a much bigger, colony-wide crisis. The very engine that was supposed to create progress was now running in reverse. It was creating this inescapable trap. This was the start of the Great Debt Spiral.
And you have to see just how fast this all unraveled. It started with just one default. Maybe a construction guild couldn't repay its loan. To protect themselves, the banks jacked up interest rates for everybody. And just like that, every single loan in Antropolis became more expensive. Ants who were doing okay were now struggling, and they had to take out new loans just to pay the interest on the old ones. The colony wasn't building anymore, it was just treading water.
Alex, our economist, he tried to warn the Queen with this really powerful metaphor. A loan, he said, it can be a bridge to a better future. That's great. But the entire colony was now standing on that same bridge all at once, and the foundations were cracking under the incredible weight of all those promises. His warning was completely ignored.
And then it happened. The day of reckoning finally came. And this wasn't some slow, gentle decline. It was a sudden, catastrophic failure. The bridge didn't just crack, it completely collapsed.
The scene was just eerie. Those once bustling markets felt completely silent. The leaf coins, which had been a symbol of wealth and opportunity, suddenly seemed worthless. They were just dried leaves. Their value had been based on trust in the future, and in a single morning, all of that trust had just evaporated.
The dominoes fell with terrifying speed. Once the trust was gone, traders refused to trade. The banks, their promises now totally worthless, slammed their doors shut. Panic just ripped through the tunnels. The entire economic system of Antropolis, this delicate web of promises, had simply ceased to exist.
The citizens felt this profound, deep sense of betrayal. They had worked hard, they had made their payments, they kept their side of the bargain. But the system itself had failed them. They gathered outside the palace, not just afraid, but angry,
realizing that their future had been sold off for nothing more than an illusion of wealth.
But out of the ruins of this collapse came a powerful, hard-won lesson. The queen, shaken but determined, knew that Antropolis could not be rebuilt on that same cracked foundation. They needed a totally new way forward, one that turned debt back into a useful tool, not a destructive trap. So the queen decreed a new set of laws, and they were all built on this one simple but profound principle. Debt must be used to create real, tangible things, not just to pay for day-to-day living. From now on, loans would only go to farms that grew food or workshops that built tools. The goal wasn't rapid growth anymore, it was slow, steady, and most importantly, real growth.
And this is the wisdom that Alex, our quiet observer, finally got to record for everyone. The colony learned that true prosperity, it isn't found in a banker's ledger or a pocket full of borrowed coins. It's found in the security of the present, in building a life that you actually own.
So, when you boil it all down, the crucial point of this entire story is this simple duality. The ants of Antropolis learned that debt itself isn't good or evil, it's just a powerful force. Used wisely, it can build bridges to an amazing future, but used recklessly, for consumption instead of creation, it forges chains that can imprison an entire society.
And that brings us to the final question, the one Antropolis had to answer the hard way. It's a question for entire colonies, but it's also a question for each of us. When you look at the promises you've made, at the future you've borrowed from, are you building something real and lasting? Or are you just tightening a chain,